Guys, welcome back to another podcast episode. Today, we've got my good friend Thomas in. He flew in a couple days ago just for about 3 nights to visit. We actually met over 2 years ago online, and he's from Michigan, and obviously I'm in Canada. And we finally met for the first time in person. We've just been hanging out, kind of masterminding and solving problems. So, Thomas,
Yep.
welcome, my friend.
Jeremy, thank you.
Pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction?
Sure. Yeah. So right now, working with doctors, we actually help physicians, any type of doctors, acquire real estate. And our background is in real estate. So we have another company that does nationwide real estate acquisition. So we'll find properties off market. And just recently, we came out with this new offer where Brett, my partner, my business partner, he had this idea where, because we have this other company where we're acquiring all of these deals and we're borrowing from doctors, we're borrowing money, private lenders from doctors, and they're always asking us, like, how can we get these deals? How can I get equity in these deals? Brett came up with this idea where we have this solution where now we're having the doctors pay us as clients, and then we're helping them acquire real estate. So now we got these two different pieces. They supplement. It's just kind of like a 1 degree turn. Two separate companies, but they kind of work interlock in each other. So yeah, super exciting. We just launched it, like, hasn't even been 6 months, and super exciting to see.
Very cool. Yeah, every time we talk about it, like, I just find it so fascinating because most of the offers I see are kind of like the lower high ticket, and
Oh yeah,
I know you guys aren't quite on the
the
inexpensive
cheap
side.
side. Yeah, no.
Yeah, so it's really cool to kind of see the hear about the back end, like the fulfillment, the delivery, kind of like how you guys are positioning it. And I know we've been talking a lot about like the sales process, the lead gen, and
Oh yeah.
whatnot too. Kind of solving some problems there together, which has been really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And for anyone listening or watching, for context, the offer is starting at 150,000 to come on. It's a 12-month program where we acquire one property per month. We acquire it for them on their behalf. We get it in contract, assign it into their name. They're in full. They're 100% owner, so it's not some sort of fund or anything like that. They get all the benefits of actually owning the property, cash flow, tax benefits, all that sort of thing. So we'll acquire a property, one a month for 12 months. At the end of those 12 months, they'll all be stabilized, have it fully outsourced property management, so they're all cash flowing. And within those 12 months, after everything gets stabilized, 15 years down the line, the value of those properties will have gone. And this is without appreciation, because we like to be very, very conservative. So we don't calculate appreciation or rent increases. Their cash flow per year, annual cash flow, is about 130,000. They'll have them all paid off in 15 years, because what we'll do is we'll tell, and they can do whatever they want because they're their properties, right? But we advise them to take the income from the rent and apply it to the lowest principal, because they're using debt, right? So they'll purchase it with cash, and then they'll refinance it on the backside. So most people, when they buy a property, they'll take a mortgage and purchase it up front. So they'll get the mortgage to purchase. What we're doing is we're purchasing it with cash, so we have leverage to negotiate the purchase price, and then they get the loan on the backside. So at the end of those 15 years, they have them all paid off, $130,000 cash flow with no rent increase, which in 15 years that's just stupid. There's going to be an increase in rent, and about over $2 million in value, net worth. So for 150K, I mean, that's a pretty good offer.
That's a steal. Yeah. And like I just find it so fascinating every time we talk about it, because it's like it's very humbling for me. It's like, man, and I said this to you and Brett yesterday, actually. It's like, man, it makes me feel like I'm playing too small,
Yeah.
because it's just like, well, it's kind of like, because one thing I've learned is like, really, business is all just like a game of leverage. Like, for example, like when you're working for somebody, you don't really have much leverage because you can only earn money when you, like, with your time, you're trading time for money. And then finally, like, once you start a business, you're kind of like an operator inside the business doing everything.
Yep.
So you're still like, you have a little bit more leverage because now, like, you're the business owner, and like your potential for scale is much higher than like an employee. But you're still kind of capped at like how much time and energy you as a sole entrepreneur can invest into the business,
Yeah.
um, you're still kind of like capped. And then I guess like the next level would be just kind of like solving bigger problems, and the bigger problem you solve, and like the more value you provide to the market, obviously the more you get in return. So that's really cool, because I know a lot of guys that like they charge, let's say 5K for a coaching program, helping somebody make like, I don't know, 10K a month. So it's just over like 100K a year or something like that, right? So it's like it's still a really good return on your investment. Like it's a 20x return just within like a year, pretty much, give or take, obviously. But like just hearing about what you guys have, it's like it's so, oh, it's just so unique, it's so cool, it's
Yeah.
so different, it's fascinating, because like there's just so much leverage there. Because like one client's just worth like imagine getting like 150K paid in full. Like I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, okay.
And too, everyone that we've spoken to, just about everyone that we've spoken to, is like, well, what happens at the end of the 12 months? And they're like, well, can I do it again? Can I acquire another 12 properties? And that's when the real snowball effect starts taking place. Because if you acquire 12
Mm,
properties this year, 12 more the next year, and then 12 more the next year, you're sitting at 36 properties in 3 years. That's a lot of cash flow,
no doubt.
and the LTV, or lifetime value, of those customers, goes from 150 to 300 to 450. And if we can keep giving them value, and
Mm,
doctors are super busy, so that's why we went with doctors. And also we had a lot of private investors who would lend us money already,
mm,
so it kind of was just like an easy switch to go to. Like, oh, doctors make sense. They don't have time, they have a lot of money, they make a lot of money,
mm,
and they seem interested in real estate. So, but yeah, it's still very, very new. So we haven't gone through a whole 12 months.
yeah,
But because of the previous company and the company that we have, the acquisition company, it makes this possible. Without that, I mean, it'd
right.
be very, very difficult to find all these off market properties and do all the fulfillment that we're able to do right now.
Right, because you're technically outsourcing the fulfillment to that other company that you have
Yeah,
that already specializes in that. And
exactly.
you have the infrastructure on the back end to support that.
Yep.
That's really cool. I might already know the answer to this. I don't know, but what would you say is kind of like your main problem right now that you guys are facing, that you're kind of actively working to solve?
Yeah, definitely client acquisition. Client acquisition is number one problem that we have. Being a new company coming into this space, not having the credibility and the client testimonials is definitely makes it difficult. And also doctors too, they're very difficult to reach. Speaking with, I told you
Mm-hmm.
this already, but speaking with Perry Marshall at an event in London, he told me that he thinks that we need to take a more strategic approach.
Right.
Because doing cold outreach and Facebook ads and all these different things that we were trying, cold email, just wasn't really resonating and getting through to the doctors, because they're just so busy. Like, these guys work like freaking 80 hours a week, and they're like, their hours are crazy because someone could go in, that there's an accident, they get called in at a crazy time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to get their attention. They're also very heavily marketed by like insurance, salespeople. Like, everyone's trying to get doctors money because everyone thinks the doctors have a lot of money,
Yeah.
which most of them make a lot of money, but also a lot of them don't really have a lot of money, surprisingly, because they just spend it all. Like, everyone, it's kind of that
Mm.
that problem when, like, you become a doctor and you're like, okay, now everyone thinks I'm rich, so now I have to fill that role. I have to get the house, I have to get the car, all that stuff. So their income goes up, but then their expenses go up, and now their take home is just as much as it was when they were a resident making 40K a year.
Yeah. Very interesting, man. And I feel like, I know myself as an entrepreneur, I relate to that trap too,
Oh yeah.
because especially with social media too, you compare yourself to everybody, and like it's really easy to like, oh well, like these guys that are ahead of me or at this level, like, oh, they're driving like this kind of car, or like they have this Rolex or something like
Oh
that. Like
yeah.
that's really common. But then like if you just kind of take a step back, it's like, well, what would that even do? Like for me personally, it's like I don't really care too much about that. Um, and like I don't know, it's kind of interesting because it's been a battle with my ego, no doubt.
Yeah.
But like I was saying to you earlier, it's like I'd rather have like a super nice like ski setup and
Yeah.
just go out into the mountains with my buddies and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Classic Canadian.
yeah, yeah, and get after that. But everyone's different, and it's really easy to kind of fall into that trap of
Hmm.
that like external kind of pressure, whether that's actually real or if it's just kind of made up in your own mind about the identity that you're now taking on and feel like you have to like be consistent with that identity too.
Oh yeah, I think everyone struggles with that, not just entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's the Parkinson's law. It's that your income increases, or not your income, but your expenses increase with your income. And same with like time, right? I think that Parkinson's law applies to time as well. So if you give yourself
Mm-hmm.
4 hours to work on something, it will take you 4 hours to do it. But if you give yourself an hour, you can do it in an hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a constant battle. Our mind plays so many tricks on us, like constantly. The ego, like you mentioned, like we're always trying to prove to other people that we're doing so much better than maybe we're actually doing. Social media really is like an ego fest. Like everyone's out there trying to like project this artificial life that's not reality, you know?
No doubt. And especially like in the online coaching, in the online business coaching space, like specifically, that's kind of
Yeah.
one thing I've been battling too. Cause it's like, on the one hand, I kind of like need to share my wins
Yeah.
and like when I like big revenue days or months or whatever, because that's what like draws people to me. Because then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, Jeremy did this much in this amount of time.
Yep.
Clearly he knows something that I don't. And like, it's really good for marketing. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, then you're kind of like, and I've seen so many people fall into this trap. You're just kind of like chasing after your tail, optimizing for the short term, trying to just maximize this month and then next month and then the month after that. And your time horizon is so short and you make sacrifices for like, you sacrifice the long term to optimize for the short term.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden 3 years from now, nobody, like, it's all new faces and new names.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's so true. I was listening to this talk, this guy, he was explaining, he was running YouTube ads, and I don't remember who it was. I don't remember the exact details, but he was saying something along the lines like he had a nice car. I don't know, it was a luxury car, maybe like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something. And then he had like a super, super car, like super nice, and it was for a YouTube ad. And he like split tested it. And the leads for the super, super car were much cheaper than the ones for like the Lamborghini. And the only thing that was different in the ad was the actual car in the background, right? Which is really interesting. But then also you have to ask, okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're cheaper leads, but what are the actual leads? What type of people is that attracting?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I remember correctly, he was saying that because of those types of ads, those leads that he was attracting was typically not the right audience for his offer or whatever it was. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember the details, but I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Just by changing the car in the video, that it was giving cheaper
I
leads.
think I've seen the exact same
Oh
video
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yeah. And yeah, that's really interesting because like one thing I've learned too is like not all leads are created equal, and not all sales calls are created equal either. And some people like, I know like I was told this last year and I started to like believe in it for some reason. But then now it's like it's not the case at all. Like for example, like last June when I was working like for my um, past mentor Trey,
hmm
and I was running all of our ads, and like we had $100,000 cash week. It's like we had like our closing rate was awful. Like yeah, we made a shit ton of sales, but like we were taking like I was taking 30 sales calls a day pretty much. This is like, well, not maybe not quite 30, but like it was, we were taking 25-minute sales calls for like 12 to 14 hours back to back for like 7 days straight.
wow,
And our closing rate, like normally like on like decent leads, closing rates anywhere from like 30 to 60% kind of on average, sometimes a little bit lower, sometimes a little bit higher, depending on kind of the leads. Like when somebody like books in from like YouTube, like when I was closing for Trey, when somebody would book in directly from his YouTube channel, I'm licking my lips. I'm like, oh, this person's buying. Like
yeah,
they're sold. But then like the ads we were running were like cold traffic, and we were trying to convert straight cold. They didn't know us, like us, or trust us yet.
Right.
So the closing rate went down to like less than like 10%. So it was just like a numbers game. Like we were just hammering,
Right.
hammering, hammering. And a lot of the
Yeah.
sales took like 2 call closes and stuff like that. We'd have to like send videos and like resources to kind of warm up, nurture them and whatnot. Um, and yeah, it was a really good lesson because like kind of like the offer that I have now, what I'm doing is like using those specific ads for like retargeting, but like the ads that we're doing is like really focus on like building your audience, building your platforms. That way you can kind of systemize your content to warm up and nurture the leads. And then like whether somebody buys from me tomorrow or next month, like at the end of the day, 5 years from now, I don't care, right?
Yeah.
If they pay me money today or next month, like does it really matter?
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Right.
But like I think the name of the game is, especially like for people that have an offer similar to mine, people have an offer even like for you, and this is kind of something that I observed just talking kind of just like yesterday when we were looking at like people that have audiences in that space, because like you just said, getting a hold of doctors is very
Yeah.
very difficult. So then I was like, okay, well, instead of maybe like doing the hard work yourselves and trying to do that, why don't you leverage other people's audiences who already have an audience of doctors that have already done the hard work, right? And like, long story short, I know I'm kind of rambling here, but it's like the audience is kind of the most important thing. It's like if you have
Yeah.
an audience, you're building an audience, you're building a platform, and you're nurturing them, warming them up. Now you just have an army of people who know you, like you, and trust you, and want to buy your thing.
Yeah.
And like you have such a solid foundation, and you never have to worry about money again.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Like all leads aren't created equal. Like to give you an example, in our acquisition company, we were sending at one point we were sending like 30,000 texts a day, like cold texts. We would scrape, we would buy these lists, skip trace the people, and send like these text messages. Be like, hey, I see you're the owner of 123 Main Street. Are you interested in selling? And we had this whole operation of VAs in Pakistan that would go through and like filter them, and then they would. So I don't know what the conversion rate on the initial text was, but it was like garbage, like in the hundreds. And then they'd push them over to our CRM when they said like anything kind of positive, remotely positive, which a lot of them were joking because it's like you get a text from a stranger or some number you don't know and they're like asking to buy your house, you're gonna like, just
Yeah.
pull on their foot, right? So a lot of them would get pushed over and then that weren't interested at all. And so those ones would be about 1 in 70 we would convert. So then they would be in our CRM and we'd be cold calling them. It's still a cold call because they don't know like what's going on. This random dude texts me and I'm getting all these calls. My phone's getting blown up. And we'd be like, hey, this is Thomas or whatever. I'm calling to see if you're interested in selling your house. I saw my partner reached out to you. And it was like this huge like funnel. And then
Yeah.
compare that to SEO. We were investing in SEO, which is like Google. You search like sell my house fast in Charlotte, North Carolina or somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those leads would convert at like between 1 in 10 and 1 in 20 compared to the texting cold leads, which SEO isn't quite the same as having an audience,
Mm-hmm.
but it gives them more trust because they search us, and if they see us on ranking on Google, they like automatically get this trust, and then they go through our website kind of like consuming our content. They
Mm-hmm.
know our brand, they see our faces, all that sort of thing. So it's huge difference, and I'd rather get a few SEO leads a day than having to like fight tooth and nail. And like there's so many more problems with those cold call leads or those texting leads because like you're trying to convince them you're a legit company and they don't even know who you are, and like it's just a completely different type of person.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said there, like, hits hard with me too. It's like I would much rather have 2 to 3 like warm, hot leads a day on sales calls than like 10 or 20 like cold leads that I have to actually hard sell.
Yeah.
Because one thing I learned is like being a closer for so long was like I really don't like sales. I
Yeah.
really don't like
No.
selling. I mean, like sales in the terms of like when you have to hard sell,
Right.
when you have to like
Try to
actually
really
convince
pull their
them to
tooth
buy.
out.
Yeah, it's like, dude, do
Yeah.
you want the thing or not? do you want to make more money? Do you want to grow your business? Do you want to build your wealth? Or do you want to keep making excuses, whining, complaining, staying stuck where you're at? Like at the end of the day, that's the decision that people have to make.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't want to like force them to make a decision. I'd rather just kind of open the door and just be like, hey, here are the options. Like, I don't need your money. You need my thing more than I need your cash. But I'm telling you, like right now, I can 100% help you. And like, this is the best option because you've been struggling with this problem for so long, blah, 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 and whatnot. And it also like has an impact on fulfillment and delivery because like when you hard sell, that's when you get a lot of like people having buyer's remorse because they feel like they just got sold,
Right.
and like kind of loses a little bit of trust. They're not really bought in, and like people start asking for refunds and stuff like that. So it's like I'd rather just, I don't know, rather just have a solid foundation and just kind of a snowball that just keeps rolling and getting bigger and bigger. A wet snowball going down a big hill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the difference between inbound and outbound leads for the
Totally.
most part. Like the inbound leads are always so good because they're reaching out to you, right? They're
Yeah.
purposely booking a call to talk to you, whereas the outbound is like you're knocking on someone's door, you're calling them and like trying to convince them to become a customer or become a client or whatever it is. So there's a great book. I think it's called Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross. Have you read that?
I haven't.
Yeah, so that book's really good. It talks all about the different type of leads. I think it uses like seeds, net, and spears is what he describes.
Okay, I've heard that
And
concept.
yeah, so just and I might be messing this up because it's been a while, but I believe like a net is something where you're just casting out, like you're blasting like a YouTube ad, right? You're trying to capture as many people. Whereas a spear is like you're direct messaging people, you're spearing. And then seed is like content, blogs. Direct mail could kind of be like a seed, but also it could be a spear because if you're like consistently sending direct mail like every month to people, but you want what he was explaining in that book was you want a little bit of everything. Seeds are going to be the best, but they also take the longest, you
Yep.
know, because you got to nurture, you got to build the podcast up or the YouTube channel or whatever it is that you're doing, the Instagram, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that's a really interesting concept too. And I appreciate you kind of like explaining that too, because now it's kind of got my mind racing how like the system that I have right now and I'm helping my clients build is like very similar. It's like kind of using like the net approach to like blast ads to just a big audience.
Mm-hmm.
But then instead of trying to sell them, we get them into like we turn them from like a I don't know like a fish in the net or whatever to like into a seed,
Right.
where the content then nurtures them.
They get them in the sales funnel.
That's
Once
right.
they're in the sales funnel, then they get hit with retargeting from all these platforms.
Game over.
Yeah.
Game over.
They land in Jeremy's sales funnel. It's done.
Yeah, bring your credit card once you click on an ad. There's no escaping.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious, man. Like you've been you've got experience before in like the acquisition company actually like acquiring real estate and like doing flipping and wholesaling and stuff like that, and then now like launching this offer in the last 6 months or so. Like, is there anything that you believed before to be true that now you don't, or is there anything maybe like that's kind of part one of the question, and
Yeah.
part two is like kind of like what did you not know before that you've kind of learned now, like building up this company?
Sure. Well, I think the thing that I didn't believe was that it was possible to like sell us as a service. So when because Brett came up with this idea, and when he pitched it, we were actually in Colombia at a mastermind, and he said, "It's like I got this idea. You know, he was on the airplane when it popped into his head, and he's like, we're gonna sell this. We're gonna teach doctors how to acquire real estate." I was like, I don't know if that's really gonna work. And then it kind of evolved. We were like thinking it through. We're like, I don't know if it's going to be a done with you or a done for you. But ultimately we decided like doctors are way too busy. It has to be 100% done for you. So that was like the first thing. And the second thing was the actual price. So some of these doctors that we've gotten calls with, like we have these questionnaires, we'll ask them like how much, because to become, and really if anyone wants to invest, especially at this early stage, or become a client of ours, join our program, would do the 12 months, 12 properties. They don't have to be a doctor. That's just like the marketing niche that we're going down. But they have to have about $500,000 cash liquid, because you need to be purchasing in cash. We'll typically buy around $150,000 property, and we'll usually have like 3 in the process before we get them rehabbed, appraised, and then refinance, cash refinance, so they wash out their cash and then buy again. So the thing that I didn't believe was possible was the price that we were selling at. So first we started with a 90-day program. We're like it was actually 1 property in 90 days. And we sold that for $15K to someone, and they didn't even flinch. They're like, "Oh, we should have sold it for way more." And then we did the 12-month, and we pitched $150K, and they didn't flinch at all either. They're like, "Okay, $150K." So I think that was like the first thing, like realizing that some of these guys, and you got to find the right people, but some of these guys are sitting on like $2-3 million, like liquid. They have multiple practices. They might have like 50 to 100 employees. And there's a lot of people that just have a ton of money, man. And if you get in front of them and you can convince them, build their trust, and you have something that's actually of value to them, then you can have a service or a product that costs 100, 150, and so on. And so I think that probably like what I didn't believe was possible. Yeah.
Let me ask this: are you sticking at 150 for now?
Yeah, for right now,
Okay.
150, but we already have plans of increasing it to 180.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So we think that right now, anyone who wants to renew, we might stick them at that 180. But anyone new that's coming on, and then after we get a couple more in, we're going to bump it up to 180. Because in regular economics, what they teach people, at least what I think they teach people in school, or what I've heard, is when demand increases, you want to increase supply. But in reality, what you want to do is when demand increases, you want to decrease the supply and increase the price. So we have a very limited, because there's a lot of moving pieces to what we're doing fulfillment side. So it's not like we can take on 100 doctors and fulfill 100 off-market properties, stabilize, rehab, all this stuff. So it's very limited. So we have that scarcity built in already. So we think that we're going to, keep increasing the price until we get to the point. I think, what's his name? Dan Kennedy?
Yeah.
Is that marketer guy? Is that right?
Yeah.
He says you want to make your price as high as you can without cracking a smile.
Yeah. Man, Dan Kennedy's got some incredible quotes.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite ones from him is like, if you haven't pissed someone off by noon, you probably aren't making any money, or like you probably aren't marketing hard enough, or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like timeless principles from like kind of like the old dogs.
Yeah.
Because like humans are still humans.
Oh yeah.
So like the same principles apply. It's just the application of all that stuff has changed with technology.
The medium that you're getting the traffic through, and the ads and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and like same with like studying copywriting, right? Like,
I
know a lot of people kind of like brush off a lot of the old like copywriting books, and because they're like talking about like direct mail and like direct response and stuff like that.
Oh,
but it's like an advertisement's an advertisement, and you're still like selling to the same consumer.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to circle back to like the lead quality and kind of what we were talking about earlier, of like not all leads are created equal. And there was one thing that kind of like stood out, and let me see if I can kind of pinpoint it. I just had it. I just had it, and I kind of like bookmarked it from like
I got
10 minutes ago. So
I'll let you think on that.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment on what you were saying, like the old-fashioned direct mail.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting is that direct mail is like huge. Like it's still like massive. Perry Marshall was telling me that direct mail is the #1 marketing source for Republicans in America, the Republican political party. Like their campaigns, they spend the most and they get the biggest return from direct mail campaigns.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like still massive. Like you can imagine. I don't know. I think he told me the number amount. I'm not even going to try to make a guess, but it was like, I want to say in the hundreds of millions. Like, but I could be completely off because I don't remember. But is the number one, and it makes sense. Like if you know kind of the stereotypical or like the audience of that's maybe like generally older people or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, wow, that's it's definitely not a dead source of marketing. It's really still super effective if you know how to do it right.
Totally, totally. Um, huh. That's really interesting because
Yeah.
you listen to like a lot of people in like the online marketing space who like say it's like dead, and there's like a really big kind of misconception. But I mean, at the end of the day, people still like. I mean, I don't really check my mail too much unless I order something.
Mhm.
But in my building, like, there's a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
I see everybody checking their mailbox like every other day. So it probably depends on like the demographic you're trying to reach too.
Oh
So
yeah.
I imagine a younger demographic probably wouldn't like really like respond to it as effectively, potentially.
Yeah.
Um,
It depends on your approach too. Like
yeah,
Perry. I keep mentioning Perry Marshall, but he's like a mastermind of marketing. He's up. He's like friends with. I think he's friends with Dan Kennedy. I'm pretty sure.
okay,
He's like, I don't know if he's as old, but he's in that. He's up there, right, in that demographic.
yeah,
But he was saying, like, for example, one thing you could do, instead of sending like direct mail, it doesn't have to be an actual letter. You could send like there's one client that he had or someone he was working with where they would send a freaking paddle in the mail and it'd have like a note attached to it and it'd go into the office of the C-suite or whoever they were marketing to,
mm-hmm.
and it was like super super effective because like now they got this huge like package leaning up against the wall in their office. They're like, what the heck is that? And they open it up and like go through. I don't know what the offer was or anything, but like just there's a lot of creative ways. Like you could send them like a basketball or like whatever, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
it's there's so many different ways to reach audiences. It's just you got to be creative, and yeah, the timeless principles are always going to be effective. You know.
Yeah. Okay. I remember what I was gonna kind of bring up earlier about kind of the quality of leads, and not all leads are created equal and stuff like that. There's a few clients I've worked with that are like really big on TikTok,
Mm,
and then they like try to launch a coaching offer, and sometimes it flops. They have a lot of people, they can book a shit ton of calls, but nobody closes.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, part of it's probably just because like maybe they're not good at sales, maybe their offer isn't quite matched to like the audience they're selling to. But like, for example, I look at like my audience. I've got under 2,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
Half of them, like before I started posting about business, I had like 1,000. So like half of them are just friends and family from like high school and college. And like I've been able to do some pretty solid numbers so far with like, let's say like probably less than 1,000 like actually decent leads.
Yeah.
And then other people have like millions of followers and they can't do anything with it.
Mm,
So it's like, yeah, it's important to have like a big audience and a big following, but it's also I'd almost argue just based on my experience, it's probably more important to have like the right people
yeah.
in your audience and build a strong relationship with them.
Yeah.
And like one of my favorite things, like, and if you guys watching, this is like the secret sauce. Um, have like the way I use like my social media is like Instagram is such a good way to get new traffic and to get new eyeballs for really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to funnel like from the top over to like my YouTube channel, get them warmed up because that's what really warms them up. And I know like we were both in Ravi's like um, mastermind last year, and like one of the main thing or one of like the biggest lessons I learned from him is like the 7 hour rule.
Yeah.
On average, it takes like 7 hours of consuming your content for somebody to turn from like a cold stranger to an actual customer. And if you're just like hammering Instagram, like just DMing everybody and they're not really seeing much of your content, like they're gonna have to follow you for like a year before they buy.
Right.
But then like send them over to YouTube, they watch that for like a week or two, and they're pretty hot and ready,
Yeah.
especially if you got good content.
Yeah.
Like every single client I've signed up so far has watched at least one of my YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And like a guy signed up last week. He told me on an onboarding call, he's like, to be honest, man, he's like, yeah, I saw your ads. He's like, I probably wouldn't have bought just from your Instagram, but then I checked out your YouTube channel. I watched this one video. It just hit me hard. He's like, it just spoke right to me. And he's like, I knew I had to book a call with you. And like, that's what's already sold me. So like he came onto the call pre-sold, warmed up, and like with his credit card ready.
Yeah.
No objections. He knew already what he
Yeah.
was like, this is it. This is the solution I need. And like 3 days into working with him so far, like ads are absolutely crushing. And he's already booking calls for like $12 a call or something like that. I'll have to get
nice.
like the exact numbers. But he's like, bro, I think I'm gonna need an appointment setter soon. Like he's just got so many
awesome.
leads.
Who is that?
His name's Mike. He's a fitness coach.
Nice. Shout out to Mike.
Shout out Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get him on the channel for an interview soon. You'll see. But yeah, it's super cool to see that because it's like he was a cold stranger. He was a total stranger like less than a month ago, and saw one of my ads. Yeah. Never would have came across my content probably ever without the ads, and then got him right into the kind of like the sales process and the funnel.
Right.
There. Maybe that's a good kind of segue to like kind of go into your guys' approach. I know you guys are doing a very similar thing. Like you just wrote a book, you and Brett, and starting a YouTube channel. You've got a podcast as well. So really taking like a more strategic, very like foundational
content
approach, and kind of planting those seeds so that way like over time it's gonna really pop. And one thing that you said to me yesterday that really stuck was like you want to play long-term games with long-term people.
Yes.
And like I see you and Brett and the company that you guys are building together, and it's like very evident to me that like you guys are following that principle.
Oh yeah.
And it's really cool. And it's really refreshing because I know a lot of people in my industry are like very like short-term focus, trying to just stack cash, get as much cash as they can now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just selling. But then they have a shitty product, shitty fulfillment.
Yep.
Customers hate them. They never buy anything from them again. Right. So, yeah, maybe give us some sauce and how you guys are like kind of living out that principle. Like what kind of what's kind of the long-term vision, and how are you guys kind of building that on the day-to-day in the short term?
Sure. Yeah, so I think it really starts with culture too, because it's not just Brett and I, it's also the entire team. We wanted to, and another big focus too is that this year we're focused on, and I mentioned to you, is life by design and lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So from the team, from the culture that we're cultivating, we want to work with people who we don't want to have like this bureaucracy where we have like people punching in and like they have to follow all these rules. We just want someone to come in who's disciplined, and we know they're going to do the work. We're going to pay them really well, and we're going to give them tons of opportunities. Like when I started working with Brett and other people who've also worked with us, we've given them opportunities to acquire off-market real estate to start building their own real estate portfolio. Like that's a huge opportunity, like a benefit that you won't get in corporate America, right? You can't get like, hey, we have this off-market property that's valued at 150K and we got it locked up for 60, and we'll still make some money. We'll assign it to you for 10K, so you'll get it for 70K, but you're still getting all this equity. You know, that's like $80,000 worth of equity. I mean, that's massive. So we want to play these long-term games with not only our clients, and that's what we're trying to attract. Is it's a 12-month program, and people are already saying like, oh, I want to do more than 12 months with you guys, but also our team too, right? We want to develop this lifestyle where you can work remotely and you can travel around the world. We have just implemented this management philosophy where I heard it from somewhere, and I should probably do research on it because I just like took the word for it. There's probably a credible source, but I don't really remember where it came from. But it's something like where it said that they did these studies where if you give your employees unlimited time off, they actually take less time off and they're more satisfied. So we give everyone unlimited time off paid. The hours is dependent on their lifestyle. It is literally in the offer letter. And we're just making sure we're filtering the right people. We're looking for more in that character rather than the skill. Obviously, the skill is important, but the character can't really be trained, and the skill can.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to cultivate this culture and attract the clients in that long term. And then what we're doing with the podcast, the YouTube, the first book, we're already thinking about writing more books as well. Those things are going to take a long time. Like it's going to take, I think I was listening to Alex Ramosi and he was explaining like the first 2 years even like of a podcast is you just learning how to communicate and learning how, what you want to talk about and just building the episodes up, right? Because no one's going to listen to someone who has 5 episodes or 10 episodes. But once you get 100 episodes in, that's when you start getting that audience and that snowball effect starts taking place. So yeah, that's really our strategy long term right now. We know it's going to take a while. We're doing a lot on LinkedIn outreach. We found that to be effective. We were doing cold email, not super effective, we found, so we've turned that off. We were doing like approaching in person and also cold calling wasn't working for our audience at all. So we're making that pivot, and also in the future we want to do like events and conferences and speaking at place, in front of doctors and that sort of thing, because they really like that credibility. I mean, everyone they want to work with people that they think are credible, and they can trust, right? So that's really our long-term strategy that we're deploying our marketing side.
No doubt. I really like that. And it's really interesting regarding like the kind of management principle that you mentioned about like unlimited time off and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you might have like a few bad apples, but I think you can vet them out pretty well before you even take them on. And I know with the right people, they won't abuse that. And so I think that's really cool. And it kind of like segues into another concept that I wanted to kind of dig into about like life by design. So I know like over the last like 12 months, you've had an incredible lifestyle while you're building the business. And just kind of tell us about that. Like, what does life by design mean to
Yeah.
Thomas?
Well, life by design means something different for everybody. For me, I had this goal, and it was about a year before I realized it, which was to be able to work anywhere in the world. Travel the world. I always had like this itch to travel. I don't know if it was inspired by seeing other YouTubers and the online and all that stuff, social media, but I always wanted to travel. So I set that goal and then worked towards it and really designed my lifestyle, my work, all those types of things. Basically sold that. I even sold my car and just was like, I'm out of here, and started traveling, went to South America, over to Europe. And now I'm in Canada visiting you, right? So yeah, I think life by design, and you can even start with like the small things, right? You don't even have to necessarily have a lot of money. It can just be like the way that maybe you are complimenting someone, or instead of tipping someone at the end of a restaurant or a meal that you go out, when you go out at a restaurant, you may say, hey, I'm here with, and this is coming from Jim Rohn, I'm here with some special guests, and I want to make sure they have the best possible experience. So here's a tip for you. That's life by design. You're doing these small things that are kind of giving you, I don't know what the right word is, but you're really getting the most out of your everyday experiences, right?
Kind of living in the now today,
Yeah.
but also kind of designing your life in the future too, in the
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I know one thing that you and I both really align with too is this like kind of setting a clear vision of like what you actually want out of your life. How do you kind of like take the very long-term concepts, the long-term vision, like 5, 10, 20 years out, and kind of distill it down into like the daily actions that are going to lead to that? Like, do you have a process for that, or just kind of like walk me through what that's like for you?
Sure. Yeah, the in the book, the one thing, he breaks it down really simple, but I think it's just by working backwards. Right? You'll say, okay, what do I want in 10 years from now? And then you just write a list, and it's really you don't want to put too much thought into it. Just ask yourself the question, what do I want in 10 years? And just write a list. It could be 50 items. It could be 100 items. It doesn't matter. It could be 5, whatever, right? You just pick those things and identify like the most 1 or 2 important, and then say, okay, this is what I want in 10 years. What do I have to do in 5 years? Or even you could do in 1 year to get closer to that 10 year. And then once you get that, you say, okay, what do I have to do this month to get close to that 1 year? And what do I have to do this week to get close to that 1 month? And what do I have to do today to get close to that 1 week? And that's the domino effect, right? It starts one day at a time in the very moment that you're in right now. And you just keep working towards that. And by no means, I'm no expert. I mean, we're both fairly young, so I'm still trying to figure everything out here, right? I don't have all the answers, but that's just been my process that I've been following. And it's really incredible to see just the act of writing down your goals has been scientifically proven to increase the likelihood of you achieving those goals. You start to notice people and things and opportunities that will help you get closer to those goals. And it's like, I don't know how it works. It's just the universe and God or whatever you want to call it. But just writing down your goals has a amazing magical effect on your life that could transform it completely.
Let's talk about writing,
Sure.
because I know you and I both are very heavily into journaling, and we have been for years. Like,
Oh
just
yeah.
literally this morning, we were looking into some journals of mine from 5 years ago when I kind of first
Yeah.
kind of got into the whole personal development space. And I know, well, actually, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about your process, like your kind of annual New Year's cabin experience?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So just kind of stepping back before we jump into that, the cabin in the woods. We kind of like got a label, Brett and I. With that, we kind of make a joke out of it. Um, I used to, and I still am, like used to be like really of a rigid black or white kind of thinker, and like following all these routines. And one thing that I've learned recently is success is different for everybody. Like what makes you successful doing, maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's you have to follow these things and you have a morning routine, you have a night routine, you do all this, would be complete disaster and failure for someone else. So it's a complete, like you can't just see what someone else is doing and completely copy it. You got to kind of figure out what works for you, and then just build off of that. So it's like a test and measure type of thing. And for me, when I first started journaling, it really just started as, it actually came from a book I read, Mind Hacking, and that was like the snowball effect. I read that book, and I think it mentioned, who was it? Was it Ben Franklin? I think it was Benjamin Franklin, and it explained how he kept a journal, and he had these 13 virtues. Have you heard this?
I think so. I think it's Ben Franklin.
Ben Frank, yeah, okay. And each day, at the end of the day, he would reflect on his day and like make a dot on any of the virtues or the core values that he didn't follow. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, that's a really cool idea. So I started doing that, and then I started like writing more things. I started doing like, today I'm grateful for this, this, and this. And then my journal came. It was kind of like a blend of a diary and also, like when I get ideas and planning. But then I came to this point where I was literally tracking like all my virtues, and I was tracking like, what time did I wake up? What time did I go to bed? Did I work out? And it became like almost like I was like, it wasn't helping me. It was actually hurting me to a point.
Yeah, I did the
And
same thing.
yeah, I feel like a lot of people will go through that cycle where they're like so disciplined. Like I was hurting my relationships and different things because I was so rigid with things. And I
Mm.
learned that people are more important than things, right? You always want to put people first. So that was through that. And I wouldn't have learned that though if I wouldn't have kept the journal, because now I can go back and reflect and look at everything that I wrote down, which anything that you write, you first have to think. So you can kind of see what was I thinking a year ago or 6 months ago or even last week, and take a look at that. But jumping to the question that you had, the cabin in the woods. So this also came from Jim Rohn, and he advises people to learn to reflect with yourself. He says at the end of each day, take a couple minutes and ask yourself, what did I do? Who did I see? What did they say? How did I feel? What did I learn? Just kind of go through the day and lock that day in. And then at the end of the week, take a couple hours and reflect over the week. What did I do over this week? How productive was it? A bad week? Okay, how can I make this week a better week? End of the month, take half the day, and then end of the year, take a weekend, go out into the mountains, go to the cabin in the woods, and bring all your journals and just spend some time in solitude and reflect and absorb, ponder, wonder, and think, how can I make this year better? How can I make this the best year ever? And it's had a huge impact on me that I've only done it 2 times. But each time I come out with this like new energy and excitement just to tackle the year,
Mhm.
It's something that I look forward to now, and it's really cool to just block out and just be in nature and not have to worry about anything.
100%. Yeah. Just over this past weekend, I did like a 40-hour water fast and
Yeah,
dopamine detox, but I did it here in
yeah,
my apartment. So, like, no screens, no reading, no exercise, like, literally nothing except no water or no food. Literally just me, water, my journal, and just like staring at the wall for 40 hours straight. And you get to learn a lot about yourself.
yeah,
And it's really good to just kind of like, and I think like in the entrepreneur space too, not many people talk about this because everyone kind of like talks about like the hustle culture, like you just go, 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 like work, work, work. But like what I found is like when I have those moments where I take a step back to kind of just like take a deep breath and just kind of reflect and kind of just like remove myself from the day to day, then when I come back, I'm just like I'm recharged, I'm refocused, and just like ready to just kill,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And like next week, I'll be going on a ski trip for about a week or so with a buddy, and like not gonna be doing much work at all. Just kind of like taking a bit of a step back as well, and just kind of like
yeah,
now that I've finished really just building and dialing into my program, like all my clients are just getting incredible results like straight out the gate, which is kind of like the vision I had 2 3 months ago when I started this company. Is like I want everybody to like start to see a return in the first like 7 to 30 days. And now like I've just been spending so much one-to-one time with all these initial clients. Now it's kind of starting to come to fruition, and like the course is finished. It's getting absolutely like, or I just kind of dialed it in as a result of taking that step back last weekend with like the detox and the fast, because like before it, my mind was just kind of like, I don't know, kind of lacked some clarity and some focus,
yeah,
and just kind of having that stillness and just kind of giving my mind that space to just like kind of lay everything out allowed me to just get a lot more clear on it, and like the answers just came. The answer just came to me of like, well, why would I complicate it with all this like structuring it this way? I'm like, let's just keep it simple, give people exactly what they need. There's probably no more than like 5 6 hours of videos in the course because people don't want to sit through 40 hours of
yeah,
modules anymore. It's like, hey, literally all you got to do this, build your foundation. Once you're good to go, launch ads. Here's how to book calls. Here's how to sell.
right,
And here's how to like deliver and fulfill and
yeah,
scale to whatever, and then hire, get yourself out. And it's just like very clear and simple. But for some reason, over the last couple of months, it was kind of just like complicating it. But then once you take that step back to kind of just like
hmm,
reflect on like where you are now, where you want to be in the future is just so critical, so important. Um, and another question for you is like, what kind of advice would you have? What kind of tips do you have about how to kind of plan for an incredible year ahead? How to plan, and then how to plan a really good year ahead, and how to actually make it a really good year.
yeah,
Because I know you're just coming out of a really good year.
right. Well, I would advise everyone to watch Jim Rohn, How to Have the Best Year Ever. And just take what he says and apply it. That's part of the cabin in the woods experience that I take. That it's a 4.5 hour seminar, one of Jim Rohn's best seminar. Watch it through at least once a year and take it in the cabin in the woods. And man, the things that he shares in that seminar are so impactful. Yeah, I think it just comes down to what you were saying: keep things simple. And a lot of people don't know this, but being simple is actually much more difficult than being complex. It's harder to get to something simple. Just take a simple idea and take it very, very seriously, and then execute on it.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of this other like quote or saying or something. It was like somebody was like, for example, let's say I wrote you a letter or something like that. It's like, oh, like, sorry, I wrote you a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one.
Yeah, yeah, I've
And
seen that.
yeah,
So true.
I think maybe we have a natural tendency to just like make things overcomplicated. But
Yeah,
at the end of the day, like when it comes to life, when business, anything, it's like simple scales, fancy fails,
yeah,
right? When you have too much complexity, and I say this all the time in like my YouTube videos to my clients, it's like when you add too much complexity, that's when things start to break. That's when
yeah,
your focus is being pulled in a million directions, and like you're just kind of scattered all over the place.
yep,
And like, but when you really boil it down and you just have like one business you're focused on, like good like health and like you're taking care of your body, your health is really good as well. You've got like a steady like relationship kind of dynamic as well. It's just like very simple. Then like that's when like life is good and you're kind of cruising, you know.
yeah.
But when like you're dating a bunch of chicks and traveling all over
Trying
the
to start
place,
5 businesses, do a side hustle, have passive income.
yeah,
You're
exactly.
spread way too thin. You can't get anything done. Yeah,
There's no depth there.
yeah,
Everything, all of those aspects. Yeah, you might have a lot of them, but they're very very shallow.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things when we start like we'll have annual meetings for the business or quarterly meetings as well. Any type of brainstorming type of business, we start out, we're like, okay, keep it simple. Simplicity, simple, 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 simple. We just drive it in. We need to keep
Mm-hmm.
this simple, keep things simple. And it's so hard because we always are like trying to make things more complex than they need to be,
Yeah.
but it just comes down to keep it really simple. Like all you need, and I'm stealing this from Alex from Ozzy, is to get to 100K a month or a million a year or whatever he said, is you need one audience, you need one offer thing that you're selling, and one channel. That's
Yep.
all you need. And you just need to do that a lot and just keep doing that. And you
Yeah.
get to a million a year.
100%.
And that's it. That's simple, right? You need one audience, one offer, one channel. You don't need to do all these different things and have all these different offers and all this stuff. Like you just keep it simple. And it's so
100%.
hard to get it into your brain. Like you just got to keep telling you, like simple, 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 right?
Yeah. It's funny. Like there's guys I have a sales call with a year ago, and they were telling me at the time, oh, like I've got my agency, and I also like I want to do coaching, but then I'm also doing this other thing.
Yeah,
And then you see them now, it's like they're in the exact same spot.
yeah,
Well, no doubt. No wonder.
yeah. Chasing too many rabbits. You chase 2 rabbits, you end up with none.
That's right.
You
That's
can
right.
do everything you want, but you only can do it one thing at a time, right? You can't do everything you want all at the same time. You're not going to be able to. That's like impossible. Or maybe Elon Musk, but he's supernatural. Like he's got Tesla and what else? He's got Twitter now,
SpaceX, Boring
SpaceX.
Company.
Yeah, he's got. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah,
He's a little.
he's an exception to the
He's
rule.
an alien.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that's a topic for another time.
yeah, yeah.
But
But one of the
yeah,
things I just want to mention is that I really admire about you is that you're like very, very disciplined. Like you started, when we first met. For anybody who doesn't know, is that we met online through Iman's course. We both purchased it around the same time, and we
mhm.
were part of the Facebook group. I made a post in the Facebook group like, "Hey, I want to start a mastermind accountability group." You reached out. We got 5 guys together, 5 or 6 guys together, and went through this for like what was it, like 90 days or so.
Yeah, 90 days.
And you were there every single day on time, if not early. And then you started this program 75 hard, which you shared with me and I've shared with other people. And you've just always been this very, very disciplined person. And I think that's super key, is to be disciplined. When you get these ideas and you get inspired from something, you want to transfer it into a discipline that you can then do every day, because that's going to be the bridge to success. And Jim Rohn's
Mhm.
simple definition of success is a few simple disciplines repeated every day. And that's simple. That's all it is. A few simple disciplines repeated every day.
I like that. Well, I appreciate that, and yeah, it's kind of funny. Like Alex Mosey says the same thing. He's like, you just got to do the boring things over and over and over. every day for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you'll make like all you'll do everything you want.
Yeah.
Like you'll achieve everything that you set out to achieve. It's just a matter of just doing the boring things.
That's right.
And yeah, I think it's very simple. It's not easy. That's why most people don't stick with it or don't do it. But yeah, that's a really interesting point, like about discipline and whatnot, because like I never really used to be that disciplined. That's the thing. It's like I'd say it's a skill. It's like a perishable skill that you have to build.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle that you got to build, but also have to maintain it.
Oh yeah.
Because I know, like for example, if I go traveling for a few weeks, it's like it's really easy to fall off.
Yeah, it is.
And then especially when you get back, it's like you're kind of thrown off, and it's like, oh shit, and you like it takes you a little bit to get back into the swing of things. But I think once you do have a solid foundation of that built, and like then you're set. And for me, like 75 Hard gave that structure and that foundation to me, especially as like an entrepreneur. It's like the whole day is just like you're in control. It's just white space on the calendar, and it's really easy to just kind of like dick around, slack off, not really do much. But once you kind of have, or at least like for me, what works for me might not work for somebody else. But for me, I like having that structure where it's like you have that checklist almost every day where you're just like, all right, got to do this, 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 no questions asked. I already made the commitment to myself 74 days ago that I'm going to show up for the next 75 days and do it. So I don't even have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really really powerful, I don't know if you want to call it value or virtue or principle to develop, is just like impeccable integrity to yourself, obviously to others as well. It's like, especially as like a man, it's like your word is like, it's like,
but it starts
what
you keep. Yeah, it starts with what you keep to yourself, because you can't keep promises with other people if you can't keep a promise with yourself, right? Yeah,
totally.
So yeah, and that, what you said there is commitment. When you commit to something, then it clears your mind because there's no other options. You're not like, well, maybe I'll go and tonight I'll have some ice cream, or I'll slack off a little bit. But when you're committed, then there's not, that's all you got. You're going full send, right?
Totally. Yeah. And like when I hired my fitness coach last year, he got me on a program. I committed to him for 6 months. And like for literally 6 months, man, I was up at like 4 a.m, hitting like intense workouts, maxing out every single day, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Tracking every single piece of food I put in my body to like almost dead on the calories and the macros, like every day with like no exceptions. And like that structure, kind of having that structure and that external accountability also kind of helped me like follow through on the day to day. Because I know that's what a lot of people struggle with too, because I used to as well, is just like a lack of accountability. But it's just like when you commit to something, you need to go all in and you need to burn your boats.
Yeah.
So like, I think it was, what was it, like a Spanish like conqueror or whatever, like back in hundreds of years ago, going to like South America, or I could be completely butchering.
I know what we're attacking, and then they just, the captain or general is like, we're burned, so we got to win or we're gonna die. So let's just go. There's no plan B.
Yeah, you're backing yourself into a corner. There's no plan B, and you're forced to make it work.
Yeah.
And I know it's a lot easier said than done. And from my experience, like the sooner you do it, the better, because a lot of people are scared to make that jump, scared to make that leap. But if you don't burn your boats, and you have that kind of plan B, that backup, you're kind of telling your mind subconsciously that like you don't actually believe in yourself enough that you're going to make plan A work.
Yeah.
But when you burn your boats, you don't have any other options. Then it goes from like, oh, well, there's like a tiny little seed in the back of your mind that says, well, you always have this boat to retreat into. But when you burn that disappears. And now your mindset is literally just like,
how can I accomplish? How can I win?
Yeah. I got to figure this out.
Yeah.
No matter what comes up, I'll do what it takes, and I got to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the job of entrepreneurs, to solve problems, to figure out solutions to things that other people haven't already.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I think that's a good way to kind of wrap it up. One last question is just kind of like, if you could rewind 5 years back, what
Five
would
years.
you tell young Thomas? What kind of advice would you give him to kind of expedite or enhance the journey?
Well, 5 years ago, so I just turned 23, be 18, or just turning 18. I'm just trying to think of where I was when back then. I
Or
think that
at least when you were kind of just getting into the space.
right. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I think the what I would tell myself is read a lot more books, be more disciplined, and invest a lot more into myself, and also surround myself with other like-minded people, and like make it like
Mm-hmm.
plan strategically whatever I have to do to figure out how can I get around more people that are 2 steps ahead of me, 5 steps ahead of me. Do it. Like if I have to buy a ticket to fly across the globe and go to an event for a day and like sleep at a place like a hostel or whatever, I can barely scrape together the money, then do it, because that's where I've seen the most growth, is going to these events and getting around these people that are doing so. Because once you see these people, you're like, oh, they're just like me, and they're doing all this. Like I could do that. Like if this guy's doing that, I could 100% do that. So yeah, I would say read more books, be more disciplined, invest more into myself, get around more people, masterminds, and people who are steps ahead of me. Yeah,
I love it. Well, bro, great to have you.
absolutely.
Absolute pleasure. And we'll see you guys in the next